Welcome in YouTube. We're at Abacore Benzels ITC. They've given me the keys to the building today, and we're going to be playing around with some cobots because you all have a lot of questions that y'all are always leaving in our comments. Now, we get flooded in the YouTube comments all the time, anytime we use any version of automation, cobots, robots, whatever it may be, and the consensus is pretty much the same. Robots are here to take our jobs. I want to try to dive in a little bit deeper and tell you why they're not doing that. Now, one of the comments is, how do you feel about these jobs being taken by people who have never welded or touched a machine in their lives? That might be a common misconception because we actually do need trained individuals who have a good understanding and background of welding and fabrication, because we have to not only teach them how to use the new tool, but also teach the new tool how to weld. You can't teach this how to weld without knowing how to weld a little bit yourself. So I would say that most people that are actually using this equipment have a background and knowledge of welding, and the people that maybe don't have an understanding of the machine a little bit better, but not how to use it as good as someone who has the welding experience. So how many skilled welders are being replaced? First of all, thank you for using the proper terminology for welder. I really appreciate that. Fact of the matter is, there aren't as many skilled welders out in the industry to this day. I can't tell you how many jobs that I've worked at and watched welders come in and take the test and bomb, or be a welder taking the test alongside 20 others and being only one of 2 or 3 that actually pass the test for the day. The problem is not the cobots, it's that we are lacking the skilled, trained people to do the welds themselves. The repetition and the things that a welder has to do on the daily and make the same quality, consistent weld is harder than it used to be to find. And they're not here to take anyone's job. It's just, again, another tool for a welder to make that consistent, repetitive, same, clean weld every single time. Here's one by Fabian Fabrications. It's cool, but no matter what, the reality is 2 dudes are way faster and are far more productive. Eventually the machine will pay for itself, and you'll always still need someone to operate it. Maybe the additional body for grabbing things while a welder welds is just a reasonable solution. Ain't no machine taking me out ever. And that's exactly what we're not trying to do with cobots, is take out the welder from the equation. Now, we got a pretty simple part on the table. I'm calling it the Cobot Cake Coupon. It's just a couple tiers, really easy production part, if you will, is what we're trying to simulate. Not to say that I couldn't weld this thing lickety-split. That's not the point. I don't want to have to weld this thing all day, every day. If these are coming through the shop and we've got 300 of these, as a welder myself, 3 or 4 or 5 of these might be kind of entertaining, but then I'm going to start getting fatigued, getting a little bit tired, maybe get a little bit complacent and skipping some steps. The monotony is just overwhelming. So we're going to train a welder how to train a cobot to train a coupon, weld a coupon. Now, I've had very minimal training on cobots, and by that I mean about a 5-minute crash course on how the buttons work. It comes with this teach pendant, right? The voltage and everything's set depending on what material thickness you're running. Same thing with your travel speeds. Those are all going to be adjusted from the welder's brain. In other robots and teach pendants, you have to actually program each point, each movement, every step that robot makes. Whereas the cobot, the welder can set this down and manually manipulate these arms. All we'll do is just free up the arm. You'll see that it starts to get a little bit of movement, and now the welder can grab and move this robot wherever it needs to be. But once we get it set to its home position, then we can start programming it to move to the next. Now, there are very few buttons on the handle here, which is great, because I don't need a lot of buttons. They'll push too many. So we got the top one is our mode button. It's pretty simple and color coordinated. So that yellow means that we're in the mode where we can transition from one point to the next, and this is basically non-welding points. So it's transitioning from here to where we want it to go next, or get close to our welding points. Now, when we're ready to actually do the welding, we'll switch modes, and we have this pink line. Now, this is just for straight lines only. So if we wanted to weld around this square, we would want to program with this. And if you hold the mode down for about 3 seconds and let go, it'll flash pink. Now, that's telling the robot that it needs to go in a circle. When you get to each point, no matter if it's a non-welding point or a welding point, you're going to hit save so the cobot knows where to start and stop. So right now we're going to move it from our home position. We're going to move it away from that piece of pipe and just program another point. Hit save. Once we got that, we only want to get close to this weld joint. Now, we don't need to get everything lined up, but again, we want to get about where we need to be. And now this is where the welder brain comes in. You want to program this cobot to point and shoot exactly where you'd want it to be if you were a welder. Same travel angle, same gun angle, same contact tip to work distance, aiming right for the joint that you want. This is where that welder brain comes into place. Once you've got it and you like it, you can hit save. All we got to do is program 4 points, and we'll be able to make it all the way around. When we're ready to finish, we want to try to remember where we started, and we want to overlap that so that we make a good tie-in. Checking the gun angles. In welding school, I actually got a chance to work with a robot, but it wasn't a Cobot. And doing all this to make a circle in that class took me like a week to get a circle going. Just like any welder, you're going to end up wanting to do a dry run and make sure that you're positioned well enough to make the weld. Did the first 2 points, drop down to the weld point. Now we're just going to double check and make sure that it's supposed to be going where we told it to go. Now it may not look like I'm doing much, but just watching a robot work, but I am really paying attention to what the robot is actually doing. I want to make sure it's maintaining the perpendicular gun angle and making sure that it runs a good travel speed. It's aimed in the right part of the joint. All these things I have to physically see and then go back to that pendant and adjust. You have to have a welder operating one of these things, someone who knows what they're looking at. Once it's made its first time all the way around, it gets to that other yellow point. We want to program for our next point, and we're just going to program these other 3 little welds to make. We're still going to throw a bunch of sparks and a bunch of light, so we got our PPE on. We're going to see what this thing can do. It's ready to weld. We even got our fume extraction hooked up right to the top. Now while this thing is doing all the work, I want to make sure that I'm not in its way. So I'm still aware, even though it's welding, I don't have my face down in it so I don't get hit by the actual machine. But it's laying down some nice welds. Woo! I'll be. Now taking a look at these first Cobot welds, there's a few things that I'd change as far as how I programmed everything. I did not take into account exactly where I started. So definitely having a mark of where I started so that my tie-ins aren't so heavy. Like this one's too heavy. This one was pretty spot on. And this one we stopped a little bit short. I think the weld size or maybe the travel speed, it could have adjusted a little bit, but that's all on me. Everywhere else, the robot made a very consistent bead all the way around, super smooth. The last thing I'd probably do is make sure there's plenty of anti-spatter on my nozzle because I did drop some of that spatter into the actual weldment on the very last weld. But other than that, guys, for any smaller shop that's trying to scale up and they need production but they can't find the consistent workers, that's why these Cobots came to fruition. Just a nice clean weld all the way across. Maybe clamp things down because we distorted the crap out of that plate. Let us know what other questions you have about these Cobots. I'm more than happy to answer them or find the people that know what they're talking about to answer them too. It's where the industry is going and we shouldn't be afraid of it. We should really just dive in head first and make it a part of the industry. Go ahead and be clear. When you go to train something, not only are you training the robot, but that's going to take a couple times. Where this really comes into play, that's not good. Someone check on him. Okay, he's good. I can like re-smolder wherever you want.